Imagine you're a medical assistant.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
You've got a patient in the chair, and you have an order from the doctor to draw their blood. You approach with a needle, and the patient explicitly says, no, do not draw my blood.
Right, a very clear refusal.
Exactly. But, you have an order. So you tell them, hey, it'll just take a second, and you just go ahead and do it anyway. Well, in that brief moment, doing a totally routine clinical task, you just committed a civil wrong.
Yeah, you could absolutely be sued for that. Like, you could potentially lose your entire career over that one split-second decision.
It's wild to think about. And that is exactly why we're doing this deep dive today.
It's so necessary.
Yeah. We are speaking directly to a very specific listener right now. You are a medical assistant student at PMA Chula Vista.
Welcome.
You're gearing up for your certification test, and your mission today is to decode these sources you shared with us, specifically your lexicon of healthcare law and medical ethics.
Right, which is such a critical resource. I mean, the medical side taking vitals, knowing your anatomy, that's really only half the equation,
Yeah. Okay.
The other half is understanding the legal framework that basically dictates how, when, and even if you can actually apply all that medical knowledge.
Right out of the gate, your lexicon introduces a term that kind of sets the stage for everything else. And that term is litigious.
Ah, yes. The big one.
Basically meaning we live in a society that is very quick to take legal action. People love to sue. And knowing that, mastering these legal definitions, it's basically your armor.
It really is.
But we aren't just going to sit here and read dictionary definitions to you today. That's boring. We want to look at the mechanics of these rules.
Yeah, because understanding the mechanism, like why a law exists and how it actually functions in reality, that's the difference between just rote memorization and true comprehension.
Totally.
When you see the rationale behind a regulation, it stops being this abstract concept and becomes an actual practical map for your daily routine.
So let's start with the foundation of that map. Before we get into all the lawsuits and federal regulations, we have to establish the basic rules of human behavior in a medical setting.
Right, the baseline.
Yeah, and the lexicon splits this into two foundational terms, ethics and law.
Or, to put it another way, the line between what you should do and what you must do.
Okay, let's unpack this. Looking at the definitions, ethics are guidelines for moral behavior, and they're typically enforced by peer groups. But a law is a rule of conduct enforced by a governing body.
Exactly.
The distinction seems pretty clear on paper. Like, ethics are the unspoken rules of your family. If you break them, your peers judge you. But a law is like the police officer on the corner, right? You break that, the government steps in.
That's a great analogy, yeah.
But I'm curious about how this plays out for an MA on, like, a random Tuesday morning. Can you have one without the other? Like, can a medical professional act unethically without actually breaking a law?
Oh, absolutely. All the time, unfortunately. And the certification exam is going to want you to really understand the enforcement mechanism that separates the two.
Okay, give me an example.
So let's say a healthcare worker is chronically rude and dismissive to a patient's family. Or maybe they constantly cut corners on their continuing education when they know they shouldn't.
Right. Just being a bad employee, basically.
Yeah. Now, neither of those things will result in a police officer showing up to arrest them,
Sure.
right? But their peers might completely ostracize them. The clinic manager will probably fire them. The enforcement there comes from the professional community. So that is the realm of ethics.
Okay, got it. The social consequence. Your peers are judging your moral compass.
Exactly. Whereas laws rely entirely on the authority of the state or the federal government. They are rigid.
So if you break a law...
The consequence is a fine, or losing your medical license, or even going to prison. So for your exam, if you're ever confused about whether a scenario is describing an ethical violation or a legal one, just trace the consequence.
Trace the consequence. I like that.
Yeah. If the punishment is handed down by a governing body, you're dealing with a law.
Okay, so that transition from pure judgment to government punishment brings us right into the legal minefield.
Here we go.
Your lexicon categorizes the most common actionable offenses under this umbrella term, tort.
T-O-R-T.
Right. A tort is a breach of an obligation that causes harm. It's a civil wrong. And under that umbrella, we've got 4 major traps a healthcare worker can fall into.
And these are exactly the things that fuel that litigious environment we were just talking about.
So let's start with a scenario from the very beginning of this deep dive. The patient says no, but the MA draws their blood anyway. According to the lexicon, that is battery.
Right.
Touching a person without consent, causing bodily harm. But, I mean, Battery sounds like a fist fight in an alley, you know.
Yeah, culturally, we associate a word like battery with criminal violence or an assault.
Exactly.
But in healthcare law, the mechanism of battery is simply unauthorized physical contact. The intent doesn't even have to be malicious.
Wait, really? Even if you're trying to help?
Even if you're trying to help, you could genuinely believe you're doing the right thing for the patient by getting that blood sample for the doctor. But if they did not consent, your touch is legally unauthorized. Boom. Battery.
Wow. Okay, so battery is an action. You actively did something you weren't supposed to do.
Right, an act of commission.
So how does that contrast with the next tort on our list, which is negligence? The lexicon defines negligence as a medical professional's failure to perform an essential action resulting in harm.
Well, a key difference there is omission versus commission.
Okay.
Battery is taking an unauthorized action. Negligence is failing to take a required action. The classic mechanism of negligence is a breach of duty.
Like forgetting something.
Basically, imagine you mop the floor of the clinic lobby, but you fail to put up a wet floor sign.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. A patient walks in, slips, falls, breaks a hip. Now, you didn't actively push them.
No, of course not.
But you had a duty to warn them of a hazard. You failed in that duty, and your failure directly caused them harm. That's negligence.
That makes total sense. It's the things you forget to do or the corners you cut that come back to bite you.
Exactly.
Okay, moving on. Then we have abandonment. The act of a healthcare provider ceasing to provide care to a patient. But again, in a modern clinic, what does that actually look like? I mean, it's not like you're leaving a patient stranded on a desert island.
No, but think about the continuity of care. Let's say a doctor has a really combative, difficult patient.
Oh, those definitely exist.
Yeah, they do. And on a Friday afternoon, the doctor just gets fed up and tells the patient, "We're done. You're no longer my patient. Do not come back here."
Just firing them on the spot.
Right. But let's say that patient relies on a specific daily medication for like a severe heart condition, and they run out on Sunday.
Oh, boy.
Because the doctor severed the relationship immediately, the patient had no time to find a new provider to write a prescription, and they suffer a massive heart attack on Monday.
Oh, wow. So the doctor is liable for that.
Yes. The doctor had a legal duty to provide sufficient notice, usually it's about 30 days, for the patient to secure alternative care. So cutting them off without a bridge, that is the mechanism of abandonment.
That is a terrifyingly easy mistake to make if you just let your emotions take over in the heat of the moment.
It really is.
Okay, and the final tort under this umbrella is fraud, defined as a deceitful act with the intention to conceal the truth. I assume this usually comes down to, like, money or covering up mistakes.
You hit the nail on the head. It frequently manifests as upcoding.
Which is what, exactly?
Billing an insurance company for a more expensive procedure than the one actually performed.
Oh, got it.
Or let's say an MA makes a medication error and they go back into the digital chart to alter the timestamps to hide the mistake. That is fraud.
Just straight up trying to rewrite history.
Exactly.
And if an MA gets caught in any of these, battery, negligence, abandonment, or fraud, they might end up facing the last term in this section, which is a deposition.
Ugh, the dreaded deposition.
The process where one party questions another under oath.
Yeah, a deposition is where the reality of healthcare law becomes extremely uncomfortable.
It's not like an episode of Law and Order, is it?
No, you're not in a dramatic courtroom with a judge. You're usually sitting in this sterile, freezing cold conference room with lawyers who are meticulously dissecting every single action you took on a random Tuesday, like 3 years ago.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It is. You are under oath, and your career is entirely on the line.
Which is exactly why we're mapping this out for you, our listener, right now. If you understand the mechanisms of these torts, you avoid that conference room entirely.
Precisely. Keep yourself out of the conference room.
But, physical harm and clinical mistakes, that's only one side of the coin. Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's pivot to something that might seem less dramatic than a broken hip, but is arguably where an MA interacts with the law most frequently.
And that is patient information.
Right. Patient data. Your lexicon frames this around confidentiality, the protection of patient data from unauthorized personnel.
Which is the baseline, yeah.
But then we have these two massive federal laws that seem to be in a constant tug of war, the HITECH Act and HEAT-IA.
It is such a fascinating paradox built right into the system.
Okay, let's look at the friction here. The HITECH Act was enacted to promote the adoption and meaningful use of health technology.
Right, pushing for the digital age.
Basically, the government pushing clinics to digitize everything.
Yeah.
iPads, electronic health records, networked servers, all of that. But HIPAA is the federal law requiring healthcare settings to ensure the privacy of a patient.
Exactly.
So if the HITECH Act forces a clinic to use electronic health records, doesn't that make confidentiality and HIPAA compliance like 10 times harder? I mean, data is just floating around on screens instead of locked in a physical filing cabinet. An electronic file can be emailed to 1,000 people in a second.
You've identified the absolute core tension of modern medical data.
It seems like a contradiction.
Well, the HITECH Act was necessary. Digitizing records means doctors can coordinate care instantly across the country. It reduces medication errors because, a computer can flag a bad drug interaction way faster than a human ever could.
Right, so it improves care.
It makes medicine vastly more efficient. But interoperability, meaning the ability for data to move freely, is the natural enemy of privacy.
Because data in motion is vulnerable data.
Exactly. The moment you put a patient's psychiatric history or, say, their HIV status on a tablet, the risk of exposure skyrockets.
Yeah, it could be intercepted over a bad Wi-Fi network or something.
Or even simpler than that. It could be as basic as an MA leaving their tablet on the reception desk while they go to the bathroom, and another patient just glances at the screen.
Oh, man. Just a simple, careless mistake.
Yep. And that is why hyperregulations had to evolve so aggressively. The penalties became incredibly steep to essentially force clinics to build digital fortresses around this highly mobile data.
And underlying all of this data protection is another term from the lexicon, the Patient Self-Determination Act.
Ah, yes.
Which requires healthcare providers to inform patients of their rights.
And the mechanism connecting privacy to self-determination is trust.
How so?
Well, the Patient Self-Determination Act is all about giving the patient the power to make their own choices, whether that's refusing a treatment or creating an advance directive or choosing a hospice plan.
Right, giving them autonomy.
But a patient cannot exercise true autonomy if they are terrified that their deeply personal information might be leaked to their employer or, their community.
Oh, I see.
Strict confidentiality under HIPAA is what gives the patient the psychological safety to be fully honest with their doctor and actually take control of their own care.
That makes a ton of sense. Okay, so we've secured the patient's data. We understand how to protect their privacy.
Yeah.
But what about the people actually holding the iPads?
The employees.
Right. The medical assistants, the nurses, the doctors. We need to look at how federal laws dictate the physical and social architecture of the clinic itself.
This is where we examine the baseline protections for the workers, because a clinic is a workplace, and the government enforces specific shields to keep that environment functional and humane.
So what does this all mean for you on a Tuesday morning at the clinic? The most physical of these shields in the lexicon is OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration.
Right.
The law providing safe environments for employees. Now, a lot of people hear OSHA and they just think of like construction workers in hard hats, right?
Sure, scaffolding and steel-toed boots.
But for an MA, OSHA is deeply embedded in your daily routine. It isn't just for construction sites.
Not at all. OSHA's mechanism is mandating employer responsibility, meaning your clinic management cannot legally force you into a hazardous situation without protection.
So in a medical setting?
In a medical setting, OSHA is the reason your employer has to provide gloves, face shields, proper ventilation. It's the reason we have those heavy-duty puncture-proof sharps containers in every single exam room so you don't accidentally stick yourself with a used needle.
Right, it's the physical armor of the job.
Yeah, exactly.
But the lexicon also focuses heavily on social and psychological armor, anti-discrimination laws. We have the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII.
A huge one.
Protecting employees from discrimination at work based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Basically, it stops a clinic manager from firing someone for prejudiced reasons.
Right. Title VII established the baseline for a fair workplace. But the subsequent laws in your lexicon show how that concept of fairness has aggressively expanded as society and technology have evolved.
Right, because next on the list is the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, designed to meet the needs of those with mental or physical challenges.
Think about the ADA as an architectural philosophy, both physically and systematically.
Okay.
Before the ADA, the burden was really on the individual with a disability to figure out how to navigate a world that was built for able-bodied people.
Right, they had to adapt.
But the ADA reversed that mechanism. It mandated that society must adapt to the individual. So for a clinic, that means installing ramps, making sure doorways are wide enough for wheelchairs, providing accessible exam tables.
It means physical challenges can't be used as an excuse to deny someone employment or care.
Exactly.
So the ADA gets you in the front door. But then we have a law that protects you on a microscopic level. GINA, the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act. Federal law protecting you from discrimination based on genetics.
This is a perfect example of where the law has to race to keep up with science.
It sounds like sci-fi, honestly.
It kind of does. We now have the technology to map a human genome relatively cheaply. We can look at a patient's DNA and identify genetic markers that indicate, a high probability of developing Alzheimer's or certain types of cancer decades before any symptoms actually appear.
Which is incredible for preventative medicine. But I can see how that's terrifying for job security.
Exactly. If an employer or a health insurance company had unrestricted access to that genetic data, they could theoretically fire you or deny you coverage simply because your DNA suggests you might become a financial liability in the future.
Wow, that's dark.
It is. So GINA was enacted to stop that specific mechanism of discrimination. If the ADA ensures you can physically enter the workplace, GINA ensures your very biological foundation can't be used to kick you out.
That really highlights how these terms aren't just dry history, They are actively shaping the future.
100%.
Okay, now for the final section of our deep dive, we need to zoom out, way out, beyond the individual clinic walls to the massive regulations that govern the entire healthcare industry as a whole. And then we're going to end with one crucial exception that applies when an MA leaves the clinic.
The macro systems and the micro exception. I like it.
The two massive system-wide guardrails in the lexicon are the Affordable Care Act and the Controlled Substances Act.
These two laws fundamentally alter the daily workflow of any medical assistant. The Affordable Care Act overhauled how insurance coverage functions, especially regarding pre-existing conditions.
Right.
So as an MA, the mechanism of the ACA dictates that complex web of insurance authorizations, referrals, and billing codes you have to navigate just to ensure a patient's care is actually covered.
It's a lot of paperwork. And then the Controlled Substances Act dictates how the physical drugs are handled. Federal law regulating drugs with a high potential for abuse.
Right, specifically things like opioids or certain stimulants. The mechanism of the Controlled Substances Act is extreme friction.
Fiction, like making it hard to get.
Exactly. A highly addictive pill cannot simply be handed out. It must be tracked from a locked, double-walled safe, counted meticulously in a logbook, audited by the DEA, and tracked all the way into the patient's hands.
Right, the law intentionally creates these logistical hurdles to prevent diversion and abuse.
Exactly.
So inside the clinic, everything is tracked, logged, and heavily scrutinized by these massive federal laws. But wait, we've talked about how litigious everything is. What happens when our listener clocks out, leaves the clinic, and goes to the grocery store?
Okay, let's play this out.
Let's say they're in the produce aisle, and a stranger just collapses. Cardiac arrest. The MA jumps in and starts chest compressions.
Doing CPR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But during the CPR, they accidentally press too hard and crap one of the stranger's ribs.
Ah, a classic legal hypothetical.
Right. But based on everything we've talked about today, causing bodily harm without consent, that sounds like it could be a tort. Could they be sued for battery or negligence for breaking a rib while off the clock?
This scenario right here is exactly why the Good Samaritan law exists.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah. Society recognizes that if off-duty medical professionals or even just untrained bystanders are terrified of being sued for making a mistake during a crisis, they'll just stand there.
They won't help.
Right. They'll just watch people die. The litigious environment would literally cost lives.
So the government has to create an exception to encourage people to help.
Yes. The mechanism of the Good Samaritan law is immunity. It acts as a legal shield from civil liability, provided you meet certain criteria.
Which are?
Well, you must be providing emergency care in good faith. You cannot be expecting payment for your help. And you have to act reasonably within the scope of your training without gross negligence.
So if you meet those criteria, the law protects you.
Exactly. You cannot be successfully sued for that cracked rib. It's a really brilliant contrast, actually. Inside the clinic, you operate under the intense, rigid mandates of OSHA, HIPAA, and the ACA.
Highly regulated.
Very. But outside the clinic, the law wraps a shield around you to protect the simple, ethical impulse to just help another human being.
That is awesome. And that brings us full circle right back to where we started balancing morals and mandates.
We've covered a lot.
We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today for our listener. Let's do a quick recap of the map.
Sounds good. We started by establishing the enforcement mechanisms, right? Ethics are judged by peers, laws are punished by the government.
Then we walk through the civil wrongs known as torts, contrasting the unauthorized action of battery with the failure to act in negligence, alongside the dangers of abandonment and fraud.
We explored the tension between the AKI Tech Act's push for digital medicine and HIPAA's strict privacy mandates, which of course all serve to protect autonomy under the Patient Self-Determination Act.
Then we looked at the physical shields of OSHA, the social protections of Title VII and the ADA, and that microscopic DNA defense provided by GINA.
And finally, we analyzed the massive industry guardrails of the ACA and the Controlled Substances Act, ending with that vital immunity of the Good Samaritan Law.
To our Pima Chula Vista student listening right now, you are going to absolutely crush your certification exam.
You're going to do great.
You don't just know the definitions now. You understand the underlying mechanisms.
Yeah.
You know the story behind the vocabulary. You know how these laws actually operate in the real world.
And you understand the why, which makes the what's unforgettable.
Exactly. But before we wrap up this deep dive, we do want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you study. Something that isn't even in your lexicon yet, but is actively colliding with these laws as we speak.
Yeah, we discussed how the law had to adapt to digital records and genetic testing. While the next frontier is artificial intelligence.
AI is everywhere.
It is. And it's currently being integrated into healthcare to analyze vast amounts of patient data, predict disease progression, and even recommend complex treatment plans.
It's moving incredibly fast, almost too fast.
Right. But consider the legal implications here. If an AI algorithm assists a doctor in diagnosing a patient, and the AI makes an error that results in severe harm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Who committed the tort? Who is guilty of negligence? Is it the doctor who trusted the software? Is it the programmer who wrote the algorithm? Or, is it the clinic that purchased the system in the first place?
The whole mechanism of accountability suddenly breaks down.
It completely breaks down. The traditional definitions of duty and breach of care are about to be tested in ways the medical field has never seen.
That is wild.
And you, as the next generation of medical assistants, you're going to be stepping into these clinics just as this entirely new legal reality takes shape. You have a front row seat.
It's a massive responsibility, but you definitely have the foundation to handle it. Best of luck on your exams, study hard, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.